All right, let's get started. Can you introduce yourselves?
So my name's I'm Bravo Company Commander for 220th Special Forces.
And I'm the company Sergeant Major.
So we're in Latvia at Swift Response 25. What is this exercise about?
So this exercise, it's part of the Defender series, which is a NATO umbrella exercise that it encompasses swift response, saber guarding, and immediate response. Essentially, that runs the length from introduction of forces to a RSO-9 consolidation and then to essentially a counterattack. Our portion of it is in Swift Response 25, which is a practice of a joint forcible entry, which is the rapid introduction of forces, in this case, airborne forces, into the area of operations to control key terrain and eventually repel enemy forces.
Joint forcible entry. That sounds like attacking in military lingo. 20th Group Special Forces, what kind of a unit is it?
So 20th Group specifically, we have active component, obviously. We have the CSU's 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 10th groups, which are our active duty components that are geographically aligned. And then for us, we have 20th Group and 19th Group. Those are National Guard elements. So essentially what we do is we cover down geographically all across the world when those active components cannot pick up requirements.
Okay. So National Guard as in reservists, the way I think of them?
Probably not in the traditional sense that everybody thinks of them. Our guys are pretty steady state as far as op tempo goes. Most of our guys in a calendar year train about 100 to 120 days out of the year. And then we have a cohort of guys that are all full-time in different capacities. So when traditionally in the States, at least, when you think of like reservists, you think 1 week in a month, maybe 2 weeks out of the year. It's a lot higher op tempo for our side.
Yeah, that would have been my question, since it's not easy stuff that special forces are usually doing. How does one be a reservist or not active duty and then do that?
Sure,
it's tough. Yeah, I think a lot of times what happens is guys will come off of active duty, so they'll already have a background in a lot of the things that we do that transfers over just in a less full-time capacity. And guys in this profession generally gravitate to law enforcement and other government jobs that usually have some sort of tie-in. So it's almost like quasi still working on what they have for reserve requirements, but it's tough.
Yeah, that's always the balance for our guys, is like trying to kind of do that work-life balance, because you're working and then you try to explain to your wife that you're also doing this other job that's also still working. Yeah. And then that's where a lot of your leave or your extra time goes into this other profession. But the requirements are the same. So we are managed by what we call 350-1 as far as what our training requirements are, and they're the same for us as it is active duty. So it's less time garrison, but much more the same comparable training in a lot of ways.
Okay, but yeah, it's a lot of law enforcement stuff like that. So it's not just you're not coming up with marketing managers and key account managers from business life. It's more.
We get those too.
Okay,
yeah, we get those too, and the unique thing about the Guard that is usually one of our strengths is that we have a diverse background of people from the economy in general. So it's not in a negative sense. It's not a whole bunch of groupthink from military guys. You get guys that come from manufacturing or entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors. We have all of those. So everybody comes with a unique perspective and something they've done outside of the military that usually helps in a positive way with our job specifically.
Right. Yeah, that would have been my next question, since the way the Finnish military is set up, we have mainly a reserve force. So you do a 1 year service, and then you're in the reserves and do a training here and there. But we find it to be very important, very good for the military that you're getting all kinds of backgrounds into your unit from all walks of life, and like you said, that must be the same for you guys as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, and the great thing, it's very similar because as reservists, we usually come to these exercises in NATO countries that also have a large percentage of reserve forces, and we're usually training with reserve forces, so we already have that in common, and you find that it's a lot of times more beneficial working with the reserve forces because they have contacts outside of the training area, outside of because we're not a mechanized unit. We don't go to the training area and do mechanized stuff within the training area. We're out in the population. We're on the base, off the base. So working with the reservists is always helpful because they always have contacts outside of everything else that is helpful.
Yeah. I would just caveat on that, like with our diverse background, I think it's a force multiplier, especially like as we transfer from like a counterterrorism fight into like large scale combat operations. Like for us specifically, like being able to like work in our company is located in the National Capital Region, but we have people from all over the country, but a lot of guys in defense tech and like innovation space. So like as the world kind of moves with AI and moves with all this innovation that's happening, a lot of our guys are at the forefront of that, and they're able to like basically leverage their civilian careers and that experience to be a value add here on this specific exercise, but really for the unit as a whole.
Right. Said a bunch of words that I'm gonna tackle there. First
Sorry.
of all, no, you're good. You walked right where I want you to walk into. Yeah, like a lot of the Western forces are coming off of that GWAT world into this world of peer-to-peer conflict, of large-scale conflicts. How is your unit handling that? How prepared are you for a modern?
Yeah, so I mean, I always go back to a clip from General Nakasone a couple years back, and when we had this big shift in focus from CT and COIN to large-scale combat operations, and he essentially said, like, terrorism's not going away. That's one of our skill sets, and it has to remain one of our skill sets. So we don't forget and we don't stop doing CT and COIN. We just also have to focus more on LSCO and large-scale combat operations. So the fortunate thing is we still have a lot of talent that spent 20 years in the global war on terror in like Iraq, Afghanistan, a lot of places like that. So we can still leverage those skills and keep those in our training rotation. So just making sure that in addition to doing your special reconnaissance and your long range movements and being sort of invisible in the AO. Also making sure you're hitting those other counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations, training objectives. So it's difficult. I only have so much time, right?
Yeah.
I only have so much time to train on everything that I need to train on. So it's always a balance. So both is the short answer. We do it all, and it ebbs and flows. Through a training cycle, you'll get better at one to a point where you consider yourself proficient, and then you switch to another one, and that the previous one sort of falls off a little bit, and then you just kind of hit them all up throughout the training cycle and keep moving forward.
I think that specifically for us, and like going to your question of like how prepared are we, I had a great conversation about a year ago. We were doing another exercise, joint multinational exercise with some partners, and I was talking to General Ferguson, who's the commander of 1st Special Forces, and I told him that I think we're uniquely prepared to be at the tip of the spear. As far as like being in a shoot house or on a flat range, like our guys are not getting the same like time as active duty, but as far as being able to operate in this new environment with technology and everything that's happening, I think it puts us in a unique position because active duty in the way that they procure technology, how they're basically in a receive mode of whatever comes down from the highest echelon. I think we're uniquely pivoted to lean forward into that because of our civilian careers. Guys are not waiting on solutions to be basically handed down to them from a higher echelon. They're actively going out there and they're pursuing solutions. They're working in a civilian capacity to answer a lot of those complex questions that are out there. specifically for our guys because of where they're situated and what jobs that they do. So I think it's a unique mind shift from what we have in the counterterrorism fight to like what we're seeing right now with these large scale operations.
Right. So also what you're saying is when it comes to different conflicts around the world, a lot of innovation going in, AI, drones, you guys are also following that along, and you're hoping and probably also expecting your teams to sort of listen in on what's happening to bring those things into your teams, or
100%. So like our procurement system in the United States is still way behind as far as like modernization goes, because the procurement system was established back in like World War II. So like by the time you get some type of technology that's actually down to the end user, to the warfighter, most of the time it's antiquated, or it has very little user experience, user interface to that warfighter. So for our guys, and specifically in SOF in general, like it's a lot of civilian off-the-shelf technology that we're pulling, and then we're experimenting on the fly. It's a lot of OT, like on-the-job training type stuff. For us, like with the civilian capacity, we leverage a lot of our networks. We leverage a lot of our friendships and our relationships to bring that civilian off-the-shelf technology, and we introduce it at the very front side. So we've been working, doing mission readiness exercises, joint multinational exercises, and we're talking to friends. We're getting the latest and greatest from the civilian sector, and then we're applying it here in these conflicts and these training scenarios to be able to test and to field that stuff so that we can give feedback to the market. So it's kind of an upside down approach.
Yeah, cool. Because that's something we've noticed in Finland that's really, really important, is that civilians, reservists, they're working on that stuff anyway. They're creating, they're in R&D, they're doing whatever, and then the military can't keep up with that. So there's this whole large amount of reservists who kind of, they have all this input, like what if we tried this, what if we tried that, we're already doing this with our reserve unit, and then the military is just like trying to figure out different ways of like channeling that in the best way possible. Because also with the drones, for example, we noticed that in the Finnish military is that they're very keen, they do follow a lot, and they want to know what's going on, but they also understand that the development never stops. So you don't, in 2025 you don't want to have a drone sort of like anti-drone booklet from 2022, but sort of the military is too stagnant to be on top of that game. So that's where they sort of need to have the reservists also.
For sure. And for us, it's a talent management game as well. Being able to capture like highly talented people that came off of active duty, to Sean's point, is like we have a lot of guys that they've done their 10 years and they want to do something else, but they still like want that attachment to the team. They still want that team life. Like how does the military, specifically like special operations, who spent millions of dollars training this guy, be able to capture that guy that can go out into the private sector, into the private market, and make $200,000-$300,000 a year being low-level satellite engineers or being some type of like drone operator and stuff? You just can't do it. They can't. But what if you can attach them into a 19th group, a 20th group? They can still have that team culture. They can still have that life. But then now that guy works for AWS and he's making that 2x salary. Like it's a really unique place where we're at in just a society in general, because I think it helps us keep those guys for a longer stint than they would have stayed anyway.
Right. All right. So sort of circling back to this exercise, what are the objectives of the different teams, or what's going to happen over the exercise?
Okay, so our role in this exercise, this is Swift Response 25. It's a rehearsal of a joint forcible entry, in this case airborne, 5 near simultaneous JFEs across Norway, Finland, Sweden, Latvia, and Lithuania, introducing forces into the area to control key terrain and repel enemy forces. As SOF, our job is to insert into the area of operations early and behind enemy lines, where we can identify high value targets that specifically could jeopardize the introduction of the conventional forces through airborne means. Collecting intelligence, passing that to our partners and up our chain of command to the conventional forces coming in, and then setting the conditions for them to successfully enter the theater. Like that is our job. Go in early, set the conditions, enable their successful entry into the theater. Because when it comes down to it, I have 60 guys. They're coming in with 1,200, 2,000, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
From a command team specifically, I think what we've done is we've just challenged our teams to do hard things, right? To put your guys, to put themselves on the edge. I had a team sergeant used to say, if you're not on the edge, you're taking up too much room. For our teams specifically, like we've told them to challenge their juniors, let them start running missions, like work on things that they haven't done before. Because like for us being out here working with partners, NATO partners specifically, the value is tremendous. Like, and not just from like a qualitative standpoint, but just like intrinsic values, like being able to work in a foreign country that doesn't speak our language natively, like being able to work in an area that we're not familiar with, in an environment where these guys don't know, because we're working in a lot of different domains, right? Like we have the information space that's going to be dynamic. We have some space stuff that we're going to be working through. So like all those different challenges for Green Berets that are also fighting through those challenges of working with partners they're not familiar with, it's going to be really like a good building block for them as they become more and more comfortable like working overseas and doing large scale combat operations.
Okay, so that's something that you want to see your teams doing, is really put themselves out there.
Yeah.
And
make mistakes, like in a training environment like this where like nobody dies at the end of it. Like, I mean, that's the best way to be comfortable when things really hit the fan in conflict, right? And in a combat. Like, so for our guys, I want them to really put it out there and try like challenge themselves to make mistakes.
Cool. All right, last one. What are you personally hoping to learn or gain from this exercise? What are you hoping to see on a very sort of personal, professional level?
I think for me, for me, you know, I've been in over 20 years. You know, I started in artillery and I moved to the Green Berets. I spent a lot of time on the teams. I've now transitioned to the company leadership role and really getting into that part of it, because when you initially make that transition, like a part of you wants to hang on and like I still like doing the team stuff. You're familiar with it. It's easier for you. You're good at it. You're always good at the last job. You know, you're better at the last job you did versus the one you're moving into. But especially through planning and executing these exercises that are far from our normal home station in the United States training areas, which are very easy to work with. Everything's big, everything's got support. It's really simple. I know the processes. For me, my focus is all about logistics and you know, moving, positioning, and resupplying teams where they need to be forward. So, you know, as you move from a team, which is very tactical, to a company leadership role, which is really about supporting those teams, coming to a place like this is really great because the logistics they're not easy. And you know, I'll miss the quote, but whoever it was, Napoleon or somebody, you know, tactics for amateurs, logistics are for our professionals. When you start to like put all these pieces together and you're trying to coordinate movement of, you know, men, weapons, equipment across borders, even in NATO countries, working with different languages, and then also tying that into the NATO doctrine, regional plans, our plans versus theirs, how things work together. How do I move, you know, supplies from one country through a system into another country when, you know, NATO responsibility is you're supposed to supply your own forces. So it's all very interesting and it's all very new, and it's difficult, and I like that. I like trying to, you know, learn and really get good at this logistics part of it, because it's so essential to the success of the teams. The teams are easy. Like I can give them a target and they're going to go get it. But if I can't keep them moving from target to target, then we only get so deep. So,
yeah, I think for us, the biggest thing too, and that's just a piggyback on what saying from the logistics standpoint, is for the last 2 decades, we've been fighting GWAT, right? And so we've been directly supported by conventional forces. Like, we've been the decisive operation that's been happening in Iraq, Syria, wherever it is, Afghanistan. Now with what we're doing here, like as we train for large scale combat, like we're in the supporting role. So we're taking a different approach. Like, and like what Sergeant Major said, as far as like the people that are following us have thousands of people. They don't really care about your 60 guys at the end of the day. Like, so we have to show value of like what our 60 guys can do to prep the environment, to be value added to those division level commanders at that highest echelon. So we've been so used to being like kind of the Cinderella, right? And now we're just in attendance at the ball, and we're just trying to be a supporting cast member. And I think that's important because we still have a place in this type of fight. But I don't think, because of the last 20 years of how inverted everything's been, that the conventional commanders understand how to use us and use us properly. And so we have to message that. We got to be appropriately messaging it, because if we get stuck in our own little like OODA loop of like, we're very important, we're the most important thing, guys lose the understanding that there's this huge monster, which is a mechanized brigade, which is these brigade combat teams that are going to be coming in behind us. We have a very, very important role, but it's a shaping operation, supporting role to what conventional's doing. I think that's a big thing that we need to be doing here in exercises, specifically like this, when we have conventional partners that are coming in behind us.
Awesome. Back to the studio. All right, let's talk work-life balance. You're a National Guard SF guy, you have a family, you have a day job. What does it take to manage all three?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because being in the National Guard, but in group, you have a non-traditional Guard schedule. So even though it's part-time, it's really more of a full-time job. It requires a lot of commitment. I travel a lot for my civilian job, so I'm not often home. With my family, they're always wondering where I am. And I'm not going to 1 weekend a month for drill. I'm gone for weeks and weeks at a time. On top of that, being a medic, you don't get all of the up-to-date training. You go to a couple different trainings, maybe once every other year. So I also work as a paramedic at a local trauma center to keep my skills sharp. So we're always working, always training to get better. But it just comes back to you're juggling a lot of balls, and you just have to have the planning to see which ball can I drop and which one is the priority right now.
Right. Do you think that's the crux for most team members, like in juggling 3 balls like that?
Yeah, I think so, because everybody being in the National Guard has some other form of life outside of this. So most people have a civilian job, most people have families, and figuring out how to balance that, there's no right answer. Everyone has to do it differently according to their lives.
What about in the unconventional warfare scenario? Do you think because of that background, you can also sort of put yourself in the shoes of your local partner force, who are also one way or the other juggling a lot of different hats like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always been one of the big value propositions of the National Guard in general, not just within Special Forces, but just in the National Guard in its totality, is that you bring a vast background of experiences to the organization and to the enterprise. And so when you bring that forward and you go into an unconventional warfare environment, you have more things to lean on and a more diverse set of backgrounds.
So the other day you were talking about the quote by Eisenhower that plans are worthless, planning is everything. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. With our journey here throughout the Operation SR-25, you can see how there are quite a few audibles, and there's also, before we step off, sometimes there's things that we're just missing altogether. So even though we try our best to get a 100% solid plan leading into an operation, just sometimes things fall through. Someone like a key figure, maybe this guy who's driving, or even when we're jumping into the Baltic, it's like, is there going to be a boat there? Is there going to be a safety boat? So these are all things that if they do fall to the side, you have to be prepared to be flexible and adjust on the fly. And then at the same time, we might get a new mission we may be thinking we're going to do one thing, and then it's like, okay, hey, actually this is more important. You guys need to flex to this. You have like 24 hours, get it done. And you can't really go to your command and be like we can't do that. Like, you're never going to say that. What you're going to do is you're going to make it happen. So that's why Eisenhower's quote is very near and dear to me, and I try to pass it on to all the other team members and like the people that I work with, is sometimes you do just get handed with a shitty situation, but you make it happen. So planning is important. It's like the cornerstone of what we do. I think what anyone like tactically does. So
How big of a percentage of what you're doing would you say is planning?
just 80-90%. It's like, you guys see it here. You spend a lot more time sitting, talking about the plan, contingencies to the plan, the rehearsals, making sure you have everything prepped. And to me, that's all considered planning. The operational piece, like, you're going out there and you're still refining the plan, but you're not necessarily planning. But that's really the only like 10% of the operation. And again, like, leading back to jumping into the Baltic, right? There's so much prep on the front end of that for, us to be in the water for 20 minutes. Like that you can see that ratio right there, 80-90%. We're planning, we're making sure everyone's going to be safe, everyone's going to come home. And then when it comes down to execution, that's really only a small window. And that's like the majority of all our operations.
Right. All right. If we talk about those 10% at the end, combat or combat-like situations, what it looks like to me is even if you're an SF guy, highly trained, it all comes down to very basics. The communication and knowing the SOPs, it doesn't necessarily get a lot fancier. You're better if you're better at the basics. Would you say that's something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's like this famous saying, I'm probably going to butcher it, but you always fall back to your like basic level of training. So something we kind of saw during the ambush was guys that weren't familiar with what they're doing. And when you guys saw that vehicle that was to the left of the kill zone, those guys were walking up, a dude gets shot, and now the guy that's to his right, he's like, well, what do I do now? And it's like, during rehearsals, what we're trying to get is people to cycle in, get used to clearing a vehicle, because you never know what you're going to do. Like on the X, when something happens and someone gets shot, now it's your job. Like, you can't just sit back, especially during the plan, going back to planning, during the planning piece, you can't just sit on your hands and just be like, well, like I'm security, so I don't need to do that. It's like, okay, well, what happens if that vehicle starts driving in? You have to, nuke that vehicle. You destroy that vehicle. Well, now are you not going to go and clear the vehicle? That's probably a poor example, but just something we can use for what's going on currently. But as you can see there, if we don't hit the basics, if we don't train them, and not everyone's like warm and fuzzy on it, and they kind of keep to themselves, and they don't want to like speak up because maybe they're intimidated, it gets exploited when you're actually doing the operation. And now someone like instance is looking at you and is like, hey, go clear that vehicle. You can't just be like, oh, I didn't practice that. It's like, no, you're going to go clear the vehicle. Like, there's no one else. You have to do it. So it's very serious. It's very important to drill the basics. It's very important to know the basics. And if you don't know them, speak up and just be humble about it and just be like, hey, Sergeant, hey, Sergeant, can you go over this one more time? Like, we have some free time. Can you teach me this? Because there's not always time to go do that when it actually matters. So absolutely knowing the basics, training the basics, and then speaking up about it and being like, hey, I need to know what this is. Very true. So Eisenhower famously saying, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. It's very apparent every time we do one of these large scale operations. Things fall off like on the front end, things fall off on the back end. Sometimes people like get hurt and injured, like that's what happened to our Delta, and now doing a one-up drill. He has to step up into that lead Delta role. So that's all things too that go into planning with like think about, that thinks about, that I think about. And not only that, but like within the operation, if you guys kind of see it, depending on where we're putting guys in the operation, like always doing things now, because he is the only medical guy and you always need to have med coverage. So again, like just hitting on it, the famous quote by Eisenhower, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. Planning is everything.
What about team culture? Coming from different backgrounds, you have big personalities, a lot of different experiences. Does that form into some sort of team culture?
Yeah, I think it allows us to leverage those skill sets the guys bring from the civilian world. I mean, we're not active full time, so we're bringing a lot of outside experience and skill sets. In terms of the personalities, yes, we're all very different. I think the plus side of it is the guys that do have those kind of big personalities are kind of like some of the quieter guys. Like we mesh together well and can still come together. We don't really get in fights or arguments a whole lot. Like dudes kind of just fit in and gel, which I don't got a lot of friends on other teams and it doesn't work like that for them. Like teams fall apart when sometimes you have those clashing personalities, but I don't see it on this team. Like it's kind of almost like a family. And yeah.
What do you think creates that on this team?
I think it's both kind of what we would picture the leaders and more the enlisted guys. The enlisted guys also respect it. One, yes, this is the military. We respect the leaders and want to succeed and be successful because we do respect them. We want to do well, so they do well, but also the leaders do a good job at listening to the other guys on the team and understanding that there is experience. It's not I'm telling you to do this, you do it kind of thing. Like it's open for discussion, it's open for consideration. Everybody wants to see each other succeed, and it's not this typical like hierarchical structure that you would see in the Army. We do well because we respect the other guys on the team, and when those guys are up in the shoot for a leadership role, or they're running an op or running a range, we want to do well for them. So it's almost a personal thing. I don't want to fail, not just because of myself. I don't want to fail because I don't want to fail, the guys on the team.
And is it almost like in the Finnish military we have the saying that doesn't translate well, I'll just explain it, that there are what you need to do well, you'll do well, and then you also know when you can sort of just chill back and take it easy, and that you notice the difference between the two.
Yeah, you guys have been around with us for a few days. You can see that I would say we like to have fun, we like to play hard, but when it's time to work hard, it's like you can feel the mood shift of like we're laughing and joking and having a good time, and then when it's time to actually go do an exercise or do some training, you can just like completely feel the mood shift, and it's back to that like traditional, let's get after it, let's work hard, you're in charge, I listen. And then as soon as we're done, we're back to laughing and joking. We can kind of bounce between the two, which I think helps with the team culture. This is the National Guard. I don't want to be in the kind of place where I'm afraid to go talk to somebody 2 ranks higher or talk to an officer because I want to be friendly with them, but I also respect their role. So I kind of like that, being able to go back and forth and work hard, play hard. You're my friend. You're also my leader. So I think that pans out really well on this team.
I think you can notice it, especially in your AARs, that you're not afraid to bring up stuff and sort of go against each other, but it also it diffuses quickly.
Yes, and that's what I kind of mean by having the good leadership that's willing to listen. Yes, the AARs we're brutally honest. They tell us to do that right off the bat, but when the AAR is over, it's done. At no point in time have I ever said something that somebody disagreed with, and then they held it against me later. And I've never done it to anybody else. It ends right there. We'll be brutally honest. It helps us build better as a team too. When there's gonna be no repercussions for speaking your mind to somebody if that's what you believe in.
So we understood the infill method for this exercise was pretty complex. How and why did you build this capability without direction from higher?
So I think it really started kind of at the grassroots level with some of the key members on the team having a capability in maritime operations and passion or in doing maritime operations in a hobby way. I think that buy-in plus document from the command and leadership and pushing that training and I don't know, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Keep going. Keep going.
I think
I can throw out some words.
yeah.
In my opinion, like a lot of other like seminal moments in my career, it was like a confluence of stuff that we had no control over with the right place, right time, and the right people. I think largely some of the previous infiltration capabilities that we had stagnated, and skill sets were unsustainable based on some of the training limitations that we're experiencing. But we had a group of relatively young guys coupled with like the right generational mix of senior guys with a lot of experience. And what it brought together was like a motivation level that was as high as I've ever seen on an ODA. So, I mean, we built a maritime capability because largely that's some of the experience that we had on the team, but it could have been high alpine. It could have been any other complex technique. We had the motivation there, and we had the components and pieces that made sense to do that. And so I think what came together was the most natural combination of those ingredients, and we just wanted to train hard. There wasn't like there was no directive, but the motivation became the core driving factor. We wanted to distinguish ourselves, and we wanted to develop a capability that was actually useful in a real world application.
Yeah, we saw this whole in the infill platform realm, and we had some capabilities on the team. And I think we just found this niche at the right time. And we really hit the ground running with it. Yeah.
I think the other piece that is, are you done?
No.
All right. I think the other piece that's important to distinguish is that, like, it's in the name, and I say it a lot to my guys, but operational detachment alpha, right? Like, we're supposed to be a detachment. We shouldn't be relying on anybody for direction, minimally for support. We should largely be driving our own training and capabilities development based on our own concepts and drive. So seeing an ODA taking that initiative and going deep into it with a great deal of inertia, like that's what it's designed to do. I think removing some of those obstacles was really all that was necessary from a command perspective. We didn't need anything to get it done.
It was something we could self-support and really drive training on to an end state where you can make a complex infill like the one for this exercise. But it was something that, we didn't need this big push or this big all this support from higher to get there.
I think it also was a natural evolution for our the components of our team based on previous skill sets outside of infiltration. So this ODA was largely a direct action focused ODA for years. And when our attention turned to some of the capabilities development for infill, I think that became a question of practicality, right? We already had a lot of the components for maritime operations to include divers, maritime equipment, boats, etc. Bringing those on board and recognizing what is the most commonly used infiltration techniques in the maritime realm, and then how do we build those skill sets? It's cool to be a diver, but at the end of the day, how many dive missions are there out there? We were direct action guys for the most part that realized, like, hey, we want to build in a greater capability that makes us more applicable. At the end of the day, we don't want to be the scalpel that sits on the shelf. Like, I'd rather be the spork you use for everything. So building maritime capability just gives us, as I've heard, access to like 70% of the world's population. That was what our intent was, practicality.
and also like the easiest for the command group to digest, and the easiest for us to get safety concerns and assessments through. And then also like a big part of this is you could and I know that you guys can tell by spending a lot of time with us, but there's a huge amount of trust in the individuals on this ODA, and I'll be the first to tell you that infill environment that we've been working on, that maritime environment it's relentless, and these guys saddled up, got in the water. I put them in some shit situations, some shit sea state situations, and they made it, and no one freaked out. No one said that this is not what they were going to do anymore. They knew it was for the greater part of the team. And you know what? At the end of the day, everyone came up and they were like, hey, I had a great time doing that. And I learned a lot.
What was going through your mind on that Chinook on your way to the point where you had to jump into the Baltic Sea at like the couple of minute mark?
Don't answer. You're going to be in trouble. I know you're mad at me.
Well, obviously, as cast master of the operation, my primary responsibilities are the safety of the casters. So that was first and foremost in my mind. But I just wanted to make sure that everything possible that I can think of that can go wrong, all of the contingencies were fresh in my mind, and I had the ability to read and react to any adverse effects of the cast or any issues with the casters once they hit the water or upon exit of the aircraft.
And yet, as is keeping with reality, Murphy still fucked him, and Murphy's name was me. I got in that infill time, I got very operationally focused, and this is something that we is thematic through a lot of things that we build as skill sets through special operations. It's a perspective question, right? So we just call it tunnel vision. You get entirely focused on a single attribute of what is your responsibility in that moment, and lose a lot of the granular detail outside of that. And my big mistake was I was operationally focused in the moments immediately prior to our exiting the aircraft, where there was a tactical task, which was simply to identify our link up far recognition signals. And I put myself in the bird in a very physically unsafe position, hanging off the tail of the bird, which at the time, if you had asked me, I wasn't thinking about it at all. I was just thinking about that the next task was we have to identify the boat, and we have to see that load signal in order to know that we can successfully orbit and drop our casters. And I think he almost murdered me in the moment. He was very tactful about it later, and made a point of talking about it in the after action. But my retrospect to that was, hey man, I'm not impervious to making mistakes. That was a mistake, and one of mindset, which are ones that are entirely fixable by me. So it was a great lesson learned, and I fortunately didn't fall out of the bird at 100 feet off the water, but that was due to some good guidance.
Yeah, this is a good training rep for me too. Like it's easy to see something very specific and kind of get a tunnel vision on that thing, but I mean the facts is there's 12 other individuals in that bird that are about to jump into a sea state 2 situation in order to link up with a large scale vessel. So it helped me refocus and make sure those guys got in the water safely.
Kind of going back to the first question, you have to constantly be improving yourself as a team. What are some of the tools? What are some of things that you latch onto to improve yourself as a team?
So there are a lot of organic components to a team that I think really in a broad sense, like you have to leverage in order to make any type of progress like real or authentic. At this level, like guys are capable, they're responsible, they're driven, and that's a given. It has to be there. But I think one of the things about this team that is important is rather than trying to fight the current and force guys to do stuff that they may have no organic interest in, no genuine interest in, we developed like personal interest in the stuff that we were doing and leveraged like a high level of motivation that's just present across the board to push really hard. I mean, I personally was getting asked questions from our higher headquarters leadership about burnout rate, like frequently. Like, hey, how are the guys? I know you guys are training harder than everybody else right now. I mean, how's your burnout rate? Are you getting guys rest? Are you getting guys, time that they need? And largely, I had no issues answering. Like, we're pushing hard. I get it, but there's such a high level of motivation that guys, even if their bodies are tired, their pilot lights on, man. Like they want to work, and that's something that I think is required for any type of like higher echelon skills development. For me it's good. For me.
Trust was already mentioned here, and these are high performance individuals, highly trained individuals. They have a lot of experience from different places, so you have to trust them that they know what they're doing, but you also have to manage them, especially you as the Zulu. How does that work for you?
That's a good question. So trust as a concept is, we all know probably from personal lives. It's hard earned, easily lost. I think that's something to be very aware of as you're managing trust thresholds, right? There is a disparate understanding of personal trust versus professional trust and confidence. We can be best buddies, but if you start conducting yourself in an unprofessional manner or one that is not in keeping with the standards that we expect of you, then you lose my professional trust, and that comes with it a great deal of oversight, management, and monitoring. That's just simply hasn't been an issue for this team. When I've started to ask more and more of guys, largely outside of any type of guidance to bump steer their understanding of my intent, like I've never had an issue with guys underperforming because of lack of skill, capability, or desire. Maybe there are instances in which I owed them a better understanding of what I expected that I largely will take on the head. But outside of those experiences, managing trust on this team, unique from others, is largely about me setting out the road in front of guys and saying, hey, like, here are my expectations and here's the intent behind what I want you to achieve. Go do it. Like, you figure it out. Use your creativity. I think the piece of trust that's pretty cool is to watch, like, I have maybe a vision of like how I think that guy's going to complete that task or how he's going to work through that problem or whatever. That's my version. But I like to leave things general because I don't think I'm the smartest guy on the planet. Like, I got a team full of smart, aggressive pipe hitters, right? I would much rather provide them an opportunity to apply their ingenuity. Yeah, I can lend some experience, right? I can tell them, hey man, this is how I've seen it done before. This is how I encountered that problem before. But by all means, like, do what you're gonna do. And sometimes the solutions that come out are fucking awesome. And I find that way more successful on a applied over time, law of big numbers, right? Like I'm going to see more cool shit come out of guys, the more hands off, the more broad my left and right limits can be. And that's entirely based on my ability to trust that dude. So it is I recognize your question is one of like, how do you manage trust? It's not really me managing trust. Like the trust is built through their actions. And as long as I can tie a direct line between, hey, this was your performance and this is my satisfaction level with your completion of that task, I've never had to push anybody. Like every one of the guys on this ODA are sled dogs. Like, and that's the way that I want it. I would always rather have to keep a leash on somebody and pull it back when necessary than to try and urge somebody forward. And that largely has to do with me, with how my trust is built. I don't tend to trust guys that I have to kindly encourage.
And like with that, it really, with that high level of trust and that high level of performance that I think this ODA is at, kind of comes with it a whole land of opportunities and soft and whatever we can do. And really, like, the sky's the limit. I just really think we're at that apex level of high trust and high performance. And it feels really good to be there. Just a good spot.
And that trust theme that you're talking about, it's not just internal to the team. Like, I'm not where the buck stops. I'm largely trying to lend experience and manage the guys in a way that allows them to gain more knowledge and build their capabilities. I'm at a point kind of in my career and life cycle where I can give off a lot of data to guys that are young and super motivated and fast little studs, and let them take the road that I've already taken, like take all that ground and then go farther. But the trust piece is a theme. It's more incumbent on us as an ODA to earn and foster the trust of our command and leadership above us at every level, right? And that's often where our team leader comes in to manage those relationships and really to package and frame the things that we're doing in a light that helps our command understand just how hard we're working. Truth is, like, we can do all the work we want, but if nobody knows about it, we haven't really moved, the needle at all. At the end of the day, and I recognize, like, we love building capabilities and we love working hard towards tactical tasks. But if nobody knows that you're capable of it, and I don't just mean knows, I mean they believe that you're capable of it at a repeatable, high level with high confidence, no one's ever going to tell you that it's a green light to go out the door. Like, it's just not going to happen. So the trust piece is, I think, a more critical question when it comes to, like, how have we tried to build the trust and confidence in our ODA from a leadership perspective. And that's when you probably have to talk to Bo about, because I think that management is largely falls within his lane. We can give him the ammo, but he's got to direct those fires.
Making hard decisions, again, going especially back to you as a Zulu, you have to make some tough decisions. Do you have some sort of philosophy for that, or something that you've learned, something you follow?
I think so. There is not a unique and binding philosophy behind making hard choices. Honestly, I think any philosophy that I could try and answer that question with is largely an amalgamation of like a million deep thoughts, hard-earned experiences, philosophical analyses that, like, you stay awake at night and stare at the ceiling and you're thinking. Hard decisions are 100% the job description of a Zulu, right? You're generally weighing shitty option versus shittier option. Especially in the tactical realm. Like, nothing is ever the easy answer. Weighing cost benefit, weighing loss versus gain, like in the seconds when things are happening, is largely the bread and butter of what a tactical leader like a Zulu has to do. And even down, like at every level, tactical leadership all across the board, you're making those decisions. You're trying to solve problems for the guy one level above you. And you're making choices that you don't have any time to analyze any deeper than the split second a lot of the time. I think one of the philosophies that's really endemic to the NCO core that I like and I use as a guiding principle is about that like 80-20% kind of rule. Like in any setting, there's a time window to make a decision before the ability to make that decision and have an effect or an impact starts to degrade because I no longer have the same opportunities, right? So in that time window, every choice is broken down into like gaining information and insight to try and facilitate a decision, analyzing that information, and then just making a hard choice. And I think the one thing that is most difficult in a Zulu is recognizing like I have to have a tolerance for the risk of being wrong. I have to be okay with being wrong. If I'm not okay with being wrong and I'm not willing to risk that, I can get caught in an analysis paralysis, right? Where instead of 80% of information gathering and make a call, capitalize on the time and make a call, make a definitive answer and go, you can get caught up in the world of, well, I'd like to know this too, and what if this? That in a tactical decision-making model is lethal, right? You could sit and swirl in information and desire to know more before you feel certain about a decision, and that can cost lives faster than making even a bad choice. So part of the hard choices that you're describing, I think it comes a lot back to confidence in your team, trust in your team, right? I have to trust my guys and I have to trust myself in order to make decisive moves, to choose a course of action and move on it even before I'm necessarily certain. I think there's also an interesting piece about tactical decision making that has a lot to do with feeling the energy of a tactical operation. I know that sounds kind of like woo-woo. But the truth is, I think every operation, I largely say to these guys sometimes like, hey, the battlefield talks back to you, right? You have to listen, right? That energy and those perceptions, whether they're truly physiological or whether they're just a feeling in your bones, like they're real and they mean something. And when you are making decisions, like you can call it gut decision or whatever, but there is some lizard brain, some vestigial lizard brain that's telling you what right is and developing a trust within yourself of what that is. And it's important. It increases your survivability. And I think it is, some caveman piece of you that still wants to help your survivability. So, hard decisions, I think philosophically speaking, I think accepting the fact that you're not always going to be right. I think trusting your teammates and your boys to make the best of any situation, and a particular bent towards aggression, right? I think making decisions aggressively is always going to put you in a better position to either commit to that course of action and just run it to ground, or recognize immediately and accept the fact that you were wrong and course correct. That comes a lot with being humble and recognize like you don't have to be right as a leader. You don't have to be right. You got to make a call. And I think that at least as far as judgment and discretion is concerned, like one of the big things that I have as an advantage is like I have so when we are operating in split elements, or when I just need like a sound check on my own thoughts and my own processing, having having somebody on the team that has a great deal of seniority and experience to be able to like pull aside and be like, hey man, how are you feeling? And I'd be like, that was pretty dumb, but it worked out. Like that's a big deal. What do you got?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I share the same sentiment as Dan on a lot of this stuff. Decision-making process, it's little, big part experience, big part philosophical ideas, upbringing, everything kind of plays a role in it. But at the end of the day, I think the most important part is to make a decision and not get stuck in that analysis paralysis phase. Once you make a decision, you can always change it. You don't have to. You can see the writing on the wall, and you can make changes to make it right. That doesn't mean those decisions don't have consequences, but we've dealt with a lot of consequences in our line of work. So
yeah, that's a really good point about consequences. I don't know. I think that the thing that is philosophical about being in an organization like this is, I won't say we're the last, but we are a very small segment of the population who truly experiences the finality of consequence. I don't know. Largely, we've like blunted the edges of all the experiences in life so that things aren't dangerous and nothing's hard. And I think as an ODA, one of the commonalities that we have as people is like, we like the hard. Like, I want the difficult. And there's a million permutations of jokes around that about guys like us, but like the truth is we seek challenge. So I think recognizing that our experience carrying that forward into the tactical realm means that necessarily like you're going to hit some really hard brick walls. There are going to be consequences that you'll spend your life trying to get over. And I think accepting that, experiencing that, accepting that, and still moving forward, I think that represents like a combination of like being a humble person, no ego, and the trust and confidence and love of your dudes. Like those things all mix together to this perfect storm place where you are comfortable being uncomfortable, making a hard decision that from experience has really hard consequences. And that's, I think, the key piece to like being a tactical decision maker is when all those things come together and you recognize like, hey, I might fuck this up. I'm going to make the best decision I can aggressively. And I trust that my dudes behind me are going to back me the fuck up. I also don't think I have to be right. So if I determine at any point that I'm wrong, man, we're going to course correct really fast because I owe these guys. I know what it's like if I fail and somebody gets fucking hurt. I owe these guys that humble responsiveness to be like, yo, dude, hey, turn around, go back that way or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
Heard,
Chef.
Hell yeah. All right. I think we can cut there.